everybody. My name is Elizabeth Ruiz, and you can reach me at gowithnature@yahoo.com. I do have a little bit of trouble with my website. It's being rebuilt, so the website is not going on right now, but I am pretty good with email, so you can email me. I am going to be talk about citrus. I'm going to give a general of like care or the usual problems with citrus. And then we go to a little bit of the basics of pruning and how I take, like how I see it and how I handle my citrus pruning. So the the citrus needs. So we know that they like full sun. They need full sun actually. They can take part shade if you have like something where the citrus is taking a really nice amount of afternoon sun and it's really warm. The citrus for the water, they are really drought tolerant. We don't talk about drought tolerant plants that put citrus in there, but they are. I do have to say that the citrus will kind of like speak to you or let you know that, okay, maybe it's too drought for them. And so what they do is when it's too dry, or maybe you are watering, you are waiting too much between waterings, what they do is they start dropping the flowers a little bit, or they dropping the fruit a little bit, and then there is dropping the leaves, and they go in that starting with the flowers, finishing with the leaves. So the leaves also wilt a little bit, and you know that maybe you are watering in between the time in between what it is a little bit too long. They do like deep watering. However, if you have citrus in pots, it's better to just regularly water them. In general, citrus will have, they are really good at had, but the most sensitive thing that they are is windy conditions. So if you have a citrus that it grows, but it is kind of like not really growing as strong, or they grow green and they become really yellow, or they defoliate often even though you are watering right, so then that could be wind. Cold wind is the worst for them. Like I had some citrus that the wind will just blow all the way from like the ocean, cold wind in the afternoons. And even though they were in the full sun, they were watered right, they were fertilized right, the citrus always got yellow color. So that can be windy conditions that the citrus don't like. The orange are a little bit more resistant to wind and cold than, let's say, a major lemon. Okay, so they are susceptible to cold temperatures. That is why I try to do my winter pruning, but my citrus pruning a little bit at the end of winter, and I wait. And if I have to do a second time, I do it in fall, but I try to do it like mid-fall, not too late in the fall, because they can get a frost bite with cold temperatures. And for the fertilization, so the fertilization, I put here a little bit of what I do with the citrus at my house and my clients and how I treat them. So one of the things I realize is we always talk about, oh, citrus, they like food, they like a lot of food. So what I realize is that citrus like to have like a constant source of food. So instead of putting, I did the experiment, instead of putting a lot of fertilizer at once, it's good to follow the indications in the bag and put like every other month or every month, and they will keep growing, keep putting fruit, flowers, or they keep having lots of leaves and get to be a little bit more resistant to the cold weather. So in spring and summer, you can fertilize, and usually I fertilize with the citrus mix or the Acelia camellia fertilizer is a little bit in the acidity, so they kind of like it. So it's not like I need to have acid soils, but the acidity for blueberries and the Camellia Acelia fertilizer is enough acidity for the tree to take it and be okay. So that is what I do. Like, for example, spring and summer, I put a little bit of that. If my citrus in right now, for example, April, they don't have any flowers, I put a little bit of that ultra blooming instead of the citrus of the azaleas. So and again, you follow the instructions in the box. And then in the fall fertilizer is actually pretty important for citrus because they do get to be, especially certain of them that have a really long cycle, meaning they produce the growth, they produce the fruit, the flower, and then the fruit, and then the tree is focusing in that fruit. So there is a slow growth and stuff like that. They, even though they are evergreen, they are anyway preparing for winter. So citrus that are really susceptible to winter, for example, the grapefruit, no matter where it is, all my grapefruits go really cold, it gets really cold and they go really yellow and they look stunted and they don't want to, like, they don't do anything. So in that case, I start putting a little bit of my fall fertilizer. So if the plant is doing good and it has fruits hanging in the thing, you can still put, like, for example, a little bit of neutral fertilizer, meaning one that has the three numbers, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, I think it is. More even, so you have a good sort of nutrition that they can take and store. If you have a citrus that always get really yellow, even the foliate part of it in winter, you can do in fall the CalMag, the fertilizer I put here. That fertilizer has two main micronutrients that help the tree go through winter without suffering too much in the cold weather. So, but it's good to prepare the tree for the cold weather. So that's why I put it in fall. You can put it in winter, but it's good to put it in fall. And I put it liquid. I put the liquid form there. There are some that are not liquid you can also use. Just remember that when you do dry, it's good that you put water, actually with both of them, I will put water, and then with the dry, I put the dry fertilizer, and then I put water on top. With the liquid, usually what I do is I put water and then I put the liquid, so the liquid fertilizer. So it just helps the fertilizer to move more. I put here in between fall and winter fertilizer, I put this organics, the fertilizer that has mycorrhizae, because that also helps the plant to prepare for that winter, especially when we have dry winters. So when we have dry winters, that is a really good fertilizer to put because it's soft in the numbers. You see it's 3, 1, 2. So it's not much about feeding the plant, but about feeding the microbes and the biomass in the soil for the plant to go through right. So that is a fertilizer that I use when so I put my CalMag in 2 months, and then closer to winter, I put this organics fertilizer that helps the plant intake of the nutrients and all the micronutrients. And then the last one is the Epsom salt. That is kind of like my Istanbul trick into healthy citrus. And is that in winter, I usually take a hot bath with Epsom salt. And I was recycling my water in the drought, and put it in my citrus, and my citrus just became green, flower a lot. Is actually, like right now, my citrus are full with flowers and have little bits of already fruit on it. So this the Epsom salt is magnesium, so it's just magnesium. So you can put like a lot of it, a little of it, and you can do often diluted, put it in the soil and let the rain dilute it for you. Dilutes really fast, so it's not a problem. And so I do that a little bit every month. And it's just say, let's say that if you have a little mandarin like my height, which is I am 5 feet, and it's little, so I will put like one handful, and then next month I put another one handful, and my mandarins and my yes, I have a citron, so it stays really green throughout. So it's really good, and it helps to produce the fruit and the flower for the next season. So Epsom salt is really easy to use. It's really cheap. You have it. Is the way the softest ways to put magnesium in your soil. So usually I go with that. A lot of people ask me, okay, what do you do with pots? So some of my citrus are in pots. I have a mandarin, and I have an orange in pot. So usually I go, like last year I did the Azalea camellia for the spring, and then in fall I start with my Epsom salt, and I went from fall to winter like one handful in a month. So, and I did it like that. So, but this time I'm actually gonna do differently, because for the acidity, I am adding just, I went back to drinking coffee. So I am actually doing the citrus mix and putting the coffee grain, which adds acidity to the soil. So the acidity that I'm talking about is really low. So when we talk about neutral is 7. So the acidity that we want is maybe 6.5, maybe 5, but not too much. So it's just 1 or 2 numbers that way. So you want it to be, you don't want to put like something that you put like for the hydrangeas to bloom, or something really harsh, because what happened is the phosphorus is not able to move much, and if it's too acid or too basic, which is the opposite of acidity, the phosphorus will not be able to be absorbed by the plant. So when I talk about acidity, I'm using really or compost or a manure or coffee grounds, something like that, really soft, that still work with the microbiome and helps the microbiome in the soil. The usual deficiencies, nutrient deficiencies with the trees are important because they are really like the most common ones are here. So we have the nitrogen deficiency that some people call it a chlorosis. So I'm gonna start with that one. And the reason why I wanna talk to that one is because I don't want you to confuse that in winter, because the citrus are cold, they are tender to cold weather, they do get yellow. And that doesn't mean nitrogen deficiency. It means that is what happens with them when they are cold. So there is nitrogen deficiency and there is cold reaction to weather. So right now, if your citrus are cold, and they always get cold with the yellow with the cold weather, so then what you need to do is the magnesium or the Epsom salt fertilizer in fall, and that is how it will help. So the nitrogen deficiency is usually yellow leaves. The whole leaves get yellow. It can be part of the tree. It can be a section of the tree. The new and the old are kind of like yellow, and that is nitrogen deficiency. I am putting here like one of the selections I use. I try to use liquid because the nitrogen moves really fast, and you can see better. You can see, meaning you can see the change faster if you use a liquid fertilizer for nitrogen. Plants take it really fast, citrus take it really fast. So I use a fish emulsion. So this is something that with these deficiencies in general, the like 4 of them right now, I will say you want to tackle first the deficiency with the fertilizer, the exact fertilizer that is needed. Let the plant recover and add a little bit more after. Some of them takes months, so you have to do it 3-4 months, putting the fertilizer before you actually see the plant. And the magnesium, for example, the magnesium, that is the next one, is it has that inverted green shape. So the venation, the center of the vein, the center vein is green, and that has the V shape in green. That one occurs in the mature leaves. So what happens is that one, the new leaves are the ones that you need to look for. So in the mature leaves stay like that. They don't usually go back to be fully green, but the new leaves are the ones that show that greenery. So that is what you need to look for. And then the iron deficiency and the zinc deficiency had a little bit of the same symptoms. So at the beginning, if you have few leaves, you don't recognize which one is which one. But in just in case, I put in one of them in the iron deficiency box, I put one that is just iron. And in the zinc deficiency box, I put one that comes together. So if you iron and zinc. So if you don't know at the beginning which one it is because your deficiency is so little, so it's not a extreme deficiency, you are not going to be able to tell which one it is. It's really difficult because both of them has the green leaves and the venations. Not necessarily that V shape in the venations, sometimes they look exactly the same. The way to differentiate it if your deficiency is extreme is that in the iron deficiency, your fruit becomes really small, and it actually ripens and everything in a really small size. In the zinc, there is a decrease in the overall fruit gel. That is the only thing that you see. But in both of them, you will see the deficiency in the new growth. So what happens is when you put the fertilizer, they take a little bit, again, 2-3 months to start showing, and it will show in the new leaves. So right away, the new leaves will show, yes, the new ones that they will grow, they start getting the green color. So that is, and for the magnesium here, I put the magnesium dicalmag or the Epsom salt. So again, the Epsom salt, you can dilute it in water and put the water on it. Or you could throw it in the ground and put water on it and dilute it like that. I like to dilute it in water and put it in because what I do is I'm kind of like feeding it and watering at the same time. So any questions about like fertilizers? And I know that is a little bit of a tricky thing. I don't know if you guys wanna have any questions for me about that.
You know, Elizabeth, I actually see a question sitting in the Q&A that is asking if your citrus is on a drip system, where do you put the fertilizer? Do you put it by the emitter, or are you still putting it around the like further crown of the roots?
Oh, so I do put it by the emitters. Yeah. And when I am fertilizing, I do try to hand water. So that is kind of like something that I do for the, oh, I cannot get out of this box. I do like for when I am fertilizing, I'm always watering, fertilizing and watering, even if I have a drip system, because the drip system is gonna take just a little bit of that dried. Or like unless that you are watering your drip system for a long period of time and you have, so pretty much what I'm trying to say is for the fertilizer to move through and get into the soil, the water needs to be touching the fertilizer. So I try to put the fertilizer, when I fertilize my plants, put the fertilizer in the ground. I don't necessarily try to like tilt it the soil, but I do make sure that I overwater like with my hose when I'm putting the fertilizer. And I do put the fertilizer close to the emitters. So wherever fertilizer is there, like nitrogen does move with the water. So every time that is water and it's coming, the nitrogen is gonna be moved. So yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to stop this screen from coming up. Okay. So sorry, so I move all these, trying to close this. So anyway, So now we're gonna go into pruning. So for the pruning, I try to do two groups. I have the group A and the group B. It's not like a scientific grouping, but it has helped me, one, to explain people, and two, to handle my trees. So in the group A, I have, and this group's related with the growth habit. So it's how the plant actually grows. And the other one is the fruiting cycle. So in the group A, I have seen that here, like in California, we have mandarins, oranges, grapefruits, tangelo, a kumquat, that specific plants, they have a long cycle. So that means they are gonna produce the growth, produce the fruit, the flower, produce the fruit, and then stay just how it is, just feeding the fruit. And they don't have another cycle. It's a 1 year cycle. Um, and so we want to make sure that timing is appropriate in the for the pruning and the flowering, and also the habit is a little bit different. They have a shoot, which is really small. Like for kumquats, the shoot is like maybe 8 inches. For oranges, it could be something like 2 feet, but they are really small. And then from that shoot, at the end, they are gonna have really little branching. And that little branching can be like 5, 6, 8 little branches coming at that tip. And in every single little branch, you are gonna see flowers and fruit. So that is why at the beginning there was this theory about the citrus, they don't like to be open up, because of course people goes and clear these little branches and leave just one. So you are actually cutting your flowers and your fruit right there. So mandarins, oranges, grapefruits, tangelos, kumquats do exactly that. They produce a shoot, which is kind of like a small, unless that naturally, no, I'm talking about the growth habit in the nature, like without being disturbed, without being like, for example, if I prune really hard, they are gonna react a little hard. So I'm not talking about that. It's how naturally they will do it. So they produce the little shoot, and then the little shoots after in the same branch, really small, right at the tips. And so always the fruit is at the tip. So these two pictures just kind of show you a little bit how it works. It has the shoot and then little shoots or branchlets from that shoot. The other one is the group B, which are the stronger growers. So we have the lime, the key lime, the Mexican lime, the caviar, the kaffir, the lemons, like the major lemon, and the citron. So those actually had a long shoot, and maybe at the tip of that or closer to the tip, they produce alternative branching. Maybe they produce 2 or 1 or 3. And from there, that is your growth. But it's one branch, and it's one branch or 3 branchlets. So it's really, and the growth is really like, can be 4 feet if they're happy. It can be 3 feet if they're happy. It can be 6 feet for a Mexican lime. If you are trying to contain it, the shoot can be 6 feet already long. So though it's a strong grower, and the cycles are really small. So in this case, you're gonna have fruit, you're gonna have flower, and you're gonna have growth throughout the year. So the cycles are like, and so you're gonna have different size fruit. Like it can be the little green stuff to the main, like big green to the big ready to pick up. So that is the difference between them. So the pruning in this group, it can be flexible. You can do from spring to fall. Don't prune it too close to winter because it can get frostbite. These are the most sensitive to frostbite. And that's why I also developed this grouping. So for this grouping, what do we see? A versus B. So we have the oranges are slow grow, like the oranges and tangerines, the group A, are slow growers. You don't see really strong shoots going. They just grow really small and get bushier and bushier. In In the group B, they are strong growers. So sometimes you can see big shoots going out in when they get established, they can start shooting out, and it can be really containing them is a little bit in the hard. They also have the group A has a more regular branch pattern. So we're going to talk a little bit about branching and location and patterns. But what I want to say with that is the main scaffolds are pretty, like if you said you made scaffolds in an orange or in a tangerine, you are going to have those main scaffolds forever, and then you're going to have your branchlets from there. In the other one, in the group B, I put it disorganized branch pattern because you can have a really nice main scaffold, but then later on you can have a main scaffold, like another big branch growing right next to it out of the blue. And so if for some reason that main scaffold is getting, like cramp, like with a lot of growth, or too heavy and broke, you do have another branch next to it growing, like in 1 year it will look the same size and the same growth. So they are really strong, and because they grow so strong and they have the weight at the tips, both of them have the weight at the tips, you're going to see that they arch back. So in the group B, you can have a lemon major that has a lot of crossing and it has a lot of tangling, and that is normal in the citrus, and we just have to work in manage it and don't let it get too much that you cannot even grab your fruit. In the group A, the fruit, how I say, the cycle is one per year, and in the group B, there are many cycles, so you can prune anytime. So for the group A, I try to do late winter, so I am doing my oranges, mandarins right now, and a little bit earlier I started it. The one thing I say to my clients is let's protect the tree if it gets really cold. For the group B, usually because they grow so strong. Oh, and in the group A, I usually do one pruning. I have few oranges that I am trying to keep small, so they do shoot out really strong at the top. So I do like a second really quick pruning at the top, so it doesn't take all the energy, put it at the top. In the group B, I usually do two prunings if I'm trying to contain the tree, because sometimes spaces are not, they are in really small spaces. So I do a spring and then I do a fall. And that is how I manage my citrus. Instead of pruning really hard the strong growers, I kind of do as much as I can, and then I do again and do a follow-up. In my follow-up, I am usually doing the top sections, not the lower sections. The lower sections, I leave them, but I do a little bit of the top sections. The citrus pruning. So these are the generals of the citrus pruning. So again, we can do it from late winter to fall, and I have a budget. So what I'm trying to say with that budget is you don't want to cut too strong your citrus. So what do I mean with that? If when you are ending up when you end up with your pruning, you see that you have half of the foliage in the floor and half of the foliage in your tree, that was a strong pruning. And what is going to happen, your citrus is going to react with a strong growth. And you don't want that, because what happens is if you unbalance that, the citrus stop producing fruit, no matter how much potassium or phosphorus or magnesium or regular fertilizer you put, they are going to stop producing, and they are going to go into growing. So that is why with citrus it's super important that you actually have a budget, so they keep growing and they keep producing. In some of them, like the mandarins, you can actually, and like some oranges, you can actually push a little bit and break the cycle, delay the cycle, you don't break it. So pretty much I have some oranges that my client told me, they grow too much oranges. I don't know what to do with them at a certain point. Like I can't give so much away. I can do so much marmalade. So what we did is I do the pruning like later on in April. So what happened is I am pruning some of those flowers. But what happened is it is still in the moment that the citrus still produce flowers. So what it does is later on it will produce flowers. So what happened is those flowers are going to produce oranges, and they will be delayed in everything, in the production of the flowers and in the ripening of the orange. So now he has kind of like 2 seasons with oranges, not only just one production, which helps him. Um, so when we are pruning, we do want to work. We work in the structure, and I'm going to try to explain what do I say with that. The structural work is really important. We want to have sound branches. If you have branches that are crossing and rubbing, you are generating wounds. So we're going to have the main scaffolds, the main branches. We want to look at them. We want to make sure that they are have enough space to grow, to produce the fruit, that they are not rubbing, and we're going to work on that. The other one is if they are too little, I want to have weight because they grow the fruit at the end. I want to have branches growing in the inside as well as the outside, no? So the apical dominance of the tree is growth at the top and growth at the edges. That's why it was, again, that theory about citrus don't like to be open up. If you open up your citrus, you're gonna have growth in the inside and you're gonna have fruit in the inside, which helps with the load of the fruit. So it's not only at the tips, but it's closer to the trunk, which makes the branch capable of having a lot of fruit. So that is a good thing. So I do open up all my citrus to the point that I'm having light go through, not too much, but light go through, so I can have the fruit in the inside and the fruit getting enough sun. Air circulation is really important. You know, a lot of the pests like crowded, shaded areas. So for air circulation, light is really good. And of course, size control is always part of my pruning. So these are a little bit of the general of how to make good pruning cuts. I think that if anything that you get in this class is fall fertilizer is really important for citrus, especially if you have citrus that have problems with weather, and good pruning cuts. Good pruning cuts make your tree less susceptible to cold, and the long leaf tree. So pretty much your lifespan of your tree is bigger if you do good pruning cuts, because they are able to heal the cuts and they don't get weaker. So when you are cutting, don't leave stubs. So you want to do right cuts. So in the sense of if you leave a bunch of the branch there, that is a stub. And when you leave stubs, the wound, the tree is not able to wall off that wound. So in this picture here, I'm showing you how you can cut right above the collar. So the collar, in this circle, the circle I have here, I'm trying to highlight the collar so you can see that it's a little bit bulgy, and you want to cut right above that bulginess, not the bulginess. The bulginess is the collar, and you want to leave that collar. So you want to cut right above the collar. Sometimes it looks like you are leaving a stub. You are not leaving a stub. You are just cutting right above. And if you do that, in the other picture, show you how the tree itself is walling off. So it makes that donut. So how the trees close the wounds, or how the trees grows is ledges. You know, we can actually, when they cut the trunk, you can see the ledges. Well, the branches also grow like that. So when they are walling off, they are closing the wound with that same ledger. So if you leave a stub, imagine trying to, if I have a step here trying to make layers, I'm gonna have to make way more layers to generate that, to close that wound. But if I cut right at the collar has the cells that wall off that wound. So in that case, I'm cutting and I am stimulating the right cells to start developing. And the collar takes long time to grow, depending on the thickness of the cut. But let's say that you are gonna start seeing the collar in 1 year. So it's really important that you kind of like have a good pruning cut. Always cut to something. So you are gonna always cut to a leaf or to a branch, to a branchlet or to the trunk. And that is good because that helps the plant to heal itself. If you are cutting to a leaf, maybe not that it's not helping the branch heal, but it's gonna stimulate that growth to happen in the right point. So pretty much you are cutting right at the right point where a growth can happen and the right stimulation can happen. So that is what is help that wound heal. If you cut to a branch, it's the same thing. So in this drawing here, I am reducing the length or maybe thinning by cutting to a branch. And I'm gonna show you later on like what is, because you wanna have the right angle and everything, I'm gonna show you later on how that cut will look like. So making good transitional cuts. What do I mean? Well, if I'm gonna cut to a leaf, I'm not gonna go to the trunk to the leaf, because or to a main scaffold to a leaf, because that is kind of like not transitional. Cutting to a leaf is maybe in the last year growth, and maybe in a thin growth, not in a thick growth. So the thinner it is, the weaker it is. The thicker it is, the stronger it is. So if you do transitions, you want to go, like having a good, like maybe a quarter smaller or halfway smaller, and like that, it helps the tree heal and it helps the tree to react less. Citrus are gonna react super strong to pruning no matter what, but these little things will help. So we're gonna talk about the directionality of the branch. So, maybe in the other, I want to talk about directionality. So this is how you look at the tree structure. So before I start with my pruning, I try to crawl down the tree. I'm not looking at my tree from the outside. I'm looking at my tree from the inside. And I look at how my branch are flowing, meaning where did it start and where did it go, and how they relate with the rest of the branches. So I sometimes start from the bottom to the trunk to be mindful that I have to flow with the branch, with my eyes. So in this case, in the first one here, I have 3 arrows. The purple arrows are showing my main scaffolds. And with time, because citrus do that, there are gonna be a growth in between my main scaffolds. So these arrows, the pink arrows, or the fuchsia arrows, are showing those branches that are interfering with my main scaffolds. So those are one of the prunings I do. When I already have my main scaffolds developed and selected, I don't want to have anything growing in these crotches. So crotches are those sections where the 2 branches develop, or the branch and the trunk, where if the trunk is where the branch develop, that is called a crotch. So you want 1, 2 branches on it. In this case, I have 3 branches. Okay, maximum 3 branches, but you don't want to have more than 3 branches in one crotch. And the reason is because the branches grow by layers. Remember about the layers? Well, those layers also help, if they start growing into each other and they don't have good angles, so pretty much you don't have enough space for the branches to grow, they start pushing in each other. And that is structurally no good for the tree. So with this weather, that we just passed by, if you go and look at the branches that they broke in any tree, you're gonna see that there was already water going into that crack, because that was a lot of pressure in this of these layers into each other. So that becomes a weak point. So for citrus, we want sound branches. So in that case, you want to have 2 branches and that's it. In this case, there are 3. I accepted, but no 4 and 5. So the little ones are gonna go. So right there, the red shows where my cuts are gonna be. I'm gonna cut right at the point of growth. In this case, I'm gonna say, if I have, maybe you can do 1 cut this spring and then 1 cut in fall. And that helps the tree not to grow bunch of growth after that, those 2 cuts. So what I'm trying to say, if that sounded confusing, because for me, it did sound confusing. So what I'm trying to say is, for those 2 cuts, I'm gonna try to space them out, because as soon as I do one of those cuts, you're gonna have a lot of things shooting in there. So what I do is I do 1 cut, and in fall, I do the other one and clean up the reaction of the first one and let it be. In this other one with the yellow arrows, so I'm showing the different branches and how they are flowing. So there is one here that is an X, so that means there is a crossing, and I don't want that crossing to be interfering with, so if I right now, they are not touching. If you, I mean, this was my best picture, but I had another one that was trying to show that they are not touching. But they are not touching for like 3 millimeters. So that means in a year, they are gonna be touching. So I have to remove one of them. And so I am gonna remove the one in the right, because I have a lot of branches right in the right. You can see I have the other 3 branches going there. So at the beginning, it may look like an open spot, but those branches are gonna grow and develop. So I'm gonna leave the branch with the V, and I'm gonna cut the branch that is going outward towards the other branches. In the same picture, we have 3 branches. So what I'm showing here is you have parallel branches. So you have one that goes in a V, like horizontally, and then you have one above, and then you have one right above. So if I have to open up, I will cut the one in the middle. So what I'm doing? I'm giving enough space for the lower branch that is really thick. So it's one of my main branches being overcrowded and not growing inside. So I am gonna remove the center one, and that is gonna give light to the lower branch that is the thick one to grow. So that is when I'm looking at my tree. So when you are looking at your structure, look at everything before you do a cut. Look at how thick is this section structurally from the inside. I crawl under my trees, and I look at everything before I move. And then I decided, well, if I cut this one, how much it will take from here? Do I have a space here? Or do I have branches coming in that will develop? And that is what I want you to look at your tree. In here, we are looking at, again, this happens so much with citrus, and you're gonna always have part of your budget in removing 1 or 2 branches from your crashes. So in the picture in the left, you have 4 branches growing in one point. And even though they are growing in different directions, they are one too many. And so what is the problem? That if it gets too heavy and one of them cracks and breaks, if it breaks in that point, you have 4 branches that are gonna suffer from it. So it's more important you just have 2. And this one, for example, the farthest to the left, the pink one that I am gonna remove, is the angle of these 2 growing is really sharp. So the purples are the ones I'm leaving. So in this case, you see, these are the angles I want. I want 45-degree angles. So like that, there is enough space for the branches to grow. So pretty much you can put your foot on it, if you need to go up in your tree, or you can just have, some space for the branches to keep growing thicker. So in this other one here, on the right, we have two branches, and these citrus do that often, that you have two branches, both of them are really nice, both of them developing beautifully, but one is crossing the other one is coming from one side, going to the other one, being on top. So those are kind of like parallel branches, what I call parallel branches, and because they are like right there growing into each other. So in that case, I do select one and leave the other one. So that's what I wanted to say here. However, I wanted to remind you, you don't have to do all these cuts at once. That's why it's important that you have your 30% of the budget, and that you have maybe do one of the cuts. So in the one that have the four branches coming, do one of the cuts. Next fall, do the other cut, and clean up the reaction of the other cut. And like that, you can, and they're gonna react. So you're gonna go and clean up the next winter, the next spring, you're gonna go and clean up the reaction of both of the cuts until there is no more reaction and there is no more cutting to do in there. So it is a process, and you don't fix everything. If you pass 30%, stop. So in this case, I will say that also helps if you are doing just one cut in one section, because you do one cut and you move on, fix the other problem, you move on, fix the other problem, and you move on. And like that, you have a whole tree, well-balanced pruning in your whole tree. So this is a young tree. You can see the trunk the trunk is at the bottom. So this is a view from the above, just to show you that I want my branch distribution to go all around my tree. So you're gonna have like in the radius, you have branches going all sections, and I am leaving enough space for those branches to develop. They develop wide, they develop high, they develop low. So what happened when the branches go really high up with the weight of the citrus, they are gonna go down. So you wanna have that space below and above your branch for the weight, for everything, for the little branches to grow too. So I want even distribution around the trunk. So here is when I was trying to tell you about, for example, directionality, cutting to something. So in the first picture, if I need to, let's say you have a really nice, I am cutting one branch and leaving only one from a V. It's a really nice V, but I have to give the example to you guys. So if I am cutting a branch and I am leaving another one, I want my shears to point to the branch I'm leaving, and that is going to give you the directionality. So in the first picture, you are seeing my shears, I pointing right to the branch that I'm leaving, with the directionality of the branch I'm leaving. That is going to give you the angle to cut to if you don't have a collar. Collar doesn't exist in every single situation, especially if you are cutting a main branch. So in this case, like the collar is way too low, the branches, I don't know, I don't even see the collar, but this example was to show you directionality. If you are not clear, it will be if you follow the branch you are leaving with your shears, that is the good directionality. Here in the second one is, for example, the perfect example of how citrus grow. So they're gonna have 3, 4, 5 shoots in one point. And our job as the person taking care of the citrus is avoid that these become your main scaffold. So this is a 1 year growth. They are all green. So that means that was last year growth. So what I wanted to do is taking care of them the fastest, However, I'm not saying in this case, I want in the picture in the middle, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 branches in one point. I don't want you to have 7 branches in one point. I want 2. And I can keep the 2 that are the thickest ones. That's perfect. So I'm cutting little branches. However, again, because it's citrus, I am gonna cut one and then I cut the others. So in this case, I put in red the one cut, which it looks like I'm gonna cut 3 branches in one. I'm gonna do that section first. These 3 top branches that are in the middle of the garage, I'm gonna cut that one first. Why I'm cutting that one first? Because that one is the one that is structurally affecting my crotch the most. So I'm gonna cut those. So if you have branches growing inside your crotch, again, crotch is that point exactly where those branches are connecting. So if you have branches growing right inside your crotch, you wanna remove those first. And then these ones with the purple will be the pruning I will do in fall. I'm gonna remove those. So that is just to give you like the perfect example how they grow. Not only that they are growing and twisting and everything, but how strong they can be. This is a lime, Mexican lime tree. In this one, again, the one in the crotch and in here, I'm showing you like, yes, you can do a cut for branches that are gonna be crossing later on. So what happened? Because of the citrus, you may not see that the citrus are gonna be, with the weight, are gonna be bending over. So that is kind of like also good to have in mind. Maybe right now this is not touching, but if it's an inch away from touching, with the weight of the fruit, it's gonna touch. So if you don't cut it now, cut it later. And so this is how I kind of like do my pruning. So if you can see in this major lemon, which is a big one, I did open it up a lot. I don't go so extreme with pruning that much, but this had this is, I think that this was like my second year pruning, and what was happening is that we have raccoons coming into the branches, are climbing in the branches and breaking the branches to get the fruit, which they are usually pretty easy, and they just, with the little hands do really well. But in this tree, I don't know why they just went for it with and broke a lot of the branches. So at the end, I open it up, and you can see it's opening up, well distributed. In the sense, it's not like I'm cutting one section and I cut 30% in one section, but you can see the whole tree with the structure a little bit and the leaves, and still some fruit on it, which is fine. I do cut some of the fruit if I see that it's going to be too heavy, and the other branches are coming also loaded with fruit, so I do remove some of the fruit. The second one is a grapefruit. So in this case, you can see the grapefruit, because it doesn't grow so much. I also don't cut it so much either, but it's still open and airy. And because they have that tendency to shoot, have a little shoot and have a little growth, you can see how the branches become kind of like the main scaffolds. You do want your main scaffolds to be strong, not only because the fruit is pretty big, but also because from that main scaffold, you're gonna have the little growth, the little branching, and the fruit in there. So your main scaffold needs to be pretty sound. Um, and in this one, the last one, I was just kind of like showing how you can see through, but I'm not making big holes in my pruning. Even though you can see, like I did big prunings, you can see a cut here. It was a major cut, but I needed to back up some of the branches. So it's really important to see that. And also in this one, I want to show you how the graft is. So you can see the graft in the first and the second tree, pretty much not in the middle. But the graft is the root system is one tree, and the top of the tree is another tree, and they get grafted, they get glued together. So that graft is really important. You don't want anything growing below the graft. It's gonna take over, and the tree that you bought is gonna kind of like get weaker and weaker. So those grafts over there are pretty well established. really nice done, and we don't have anything, no water and not mulch and no soil pile up in the graft. Okay. Yeah, so that if you guys have any questions, I'm ready.
Elizabeth, I have someone in the Q&A asking if you cut off the top of the tree to make it shorter, what that will cause the plant.
Yeah, especially for citrus. So you can see that the citrus, let me see if I have a picture here. No, I don't. For citrus, the problem is when you cut really strong the top, you're gonna have a strong reaction. So if you are cutting, like 4 feet or something in the next spring, you are gonna have double the height. So usually when people ask me to do that, I say, okay, I will do it, but it will take me 2-3 years. And so I cut, so my 30% will be at the top, perfect, but I will cut only 30% and then come in fall and cut another 30% and call then it's spring and cut another 30%. And I do it like that. So it's not like a one cut removing the whole top, but it's more like, okay, I'm slowly reducing the tree. So my reaction in the tree, even though it's strong, you're gonna still see shoots. I am gonna have those shoots not not so much. If you cut too strong, you're gonna have 8-5 shoots going up, and it's gonna be a higher tree that you had before. So I usually go slower, cut the top slower. Meaning, I do 4-5 big cuts and reduce it. And then next time, again, you can do it in fall. That gives enough time for the tree to do another 5-6 cut and reduce it. Slow is better than one-time pruning.
Okay. I'm also seeing a couple questions about increasing fruit production. As far as I can recall, just having a regular fertilizing schedule can help with that. Is there any other tips that you can give to increase fruit production?
Yes, I will say if your tree is growing green and is not producing any fruit, so then that is fertilizing. So the fertilizing, you want to put a fertilizing that has a lot of the phosphorus, and you want to put magnesium. So it's not only the citrus fertilizer, which has a lot of nitrogen, because your tree is already showing, hey, I'm growing, I already don't need more nitrogen. You want to go with something like the bloom, the one with for blooms. So, and that is more specific to the needs that the tree has. The other thing about fruit production is, okay, my tree doesn't really grow much and it's not producing much. So, or it gets really yellow, or it is really yellow and it's not producing. So then in that case, we want to look at, well, are we getting enough water? Is this in a windy condition? Because when it's windy, they have this tendency not to produce. It goes from flower to nothing. So it is producing flower or not? Is my first question that I ask my clients when they say, how do I increase production? Do I pruning at the right time or not? Because if I had a citrus that my client is like, it grows, it's nice, it's green, but the gardeners were keeping it away from the path. So it was just the flowers were being cut all the time. So the tree will not produce for that. So maybe for fruit production, ask what is the thing, look at your tree, see if it's growth versus flowers, or see if it's like, okay, produces the flowers and then drops everything. So it can be maybe water related, because when the trees had growth and then they had the flower and it gets to be really dry for them, they will drop all the fruit. They say, we don't have the energy to do this. So they drop all the fruit, the flower. So we want to look at that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you give any advice on like extremely thick rind on the fruit or like pithy rind on the fruit at all?
Yeah, so there are two things about that. Sometimes that can be a deficiency. Is not too common. I don't know if it was magnesium deficiency that may do that, but you can Google it, like put thick rind. So it can be that the actual orange or the actual fruit is like that. If you have like a normal, like for example, let's say navel orange with a really thick rind, is about nutrients, lack of
Mm.
nutrients. So you want to start working with the nutrients that is being deficient. And I'm not 100% sure which one it is, so I don't want to blow it again, but I would
Yeah.
think it's magnesium. But so what you want to do with the deficiencies, again, if I did was tackle the problem and then start with fertilization. I tackle the problem, then do a general fertilization when the problem is tackled. It can take few months, 4 months, 5 months. Then do a general fertilization, put compost on it, like help the soil, put mycorrhizae on it. That is going to help with everything intake. So sometimes our soils actually have the nutrients. Is the problem of being not the plant not being able to take it.
Okay. Let's see. I'm going through the Q&As right now. Oh, that's an interesting one. What group between A and B would you say calamandins are in, or
Oh,
calamansi?
the group A. Yeah, they
Group
are
A?
slow growers. They are yeah, group A. A little bit bushier. So yeah, you kind of wanted to open it up. So for example, in the group A is the one that if my branch is not too sound, which happens a lot with this calamansi, they are not too sound. Pretty much they kind of like bend and you think that they're gonna break, but the plant is so little. They're usually in pots. They are super cute. I love them. So what you wanted to do is, instead of having all those little branches, I go and remove one and two and I leave three of them. And so that makes the fruit, like gives a space for the branch for the light to go through the branch and also light up the branch. So instead of having five, I cut two and I leave three. And that helps for the weight. But yes, that is the group A.
Okay, awesome. Let's see if I can get one or two more questions in before we have to go today. I see, let's see. If your plant has yellow leaves, no flowers, and no fruit, and they fertilized recently, would you recommend to continue to fertilize, or what would your course of action be there?
Well, so I will ask for how long the yellow has been going on.
Mhm.
Because the thing with the yellowing, it can be that it's the normal chlorosis for winter. It can be that it's the lack of nitrogen, or it can be that it was kind of like it got dry. So it cannot be dry because it was raining, unless that the pot is like where it doesn't get any water or the section doesn't get any water. So
Mhm.
that would be my question, like what it will be. And then if it's growing, so it says it's growing, but it's not, it's yellow, but it's not producing um, flowers. So I will put magnesium. You can put the Cal Mag, or you can put the Epsom salt. So I will put, depending how big the tree is, but you can be proportionally. So usually, let's say that in a 5-gallon bucket, the one, the painted bucket, I put 1.5 cups, and I water my plant with that for 3 months. You
Mhm.
should see, if you do that with the Epsom salt, you should see that changing. And in like 2 more months, you should see some flowers. So I will say my suggestion, we do put Epsom salt. If the tree has lots of leaves, is yellow and it's not producing flowers, I will put Epsom salt. It will help for all of it.
Okay, that's awesome. Let's see. There were a couple more like pest questions and remedy questions, but not sure how many of those we'll be able to get to in the rest of our time here. So, are there any common pests that citrus deal with that you can recommend an easy remedy for? Something like the lantern bug or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I will say there is a lot of things like, for example, that eat the leaves or make homes in the leaves, and the leaves is curl in. Um, so I do check in if I don't have like a night. I look in the leaves when I have weird growth. I open the leaves up and see is there an insect making a bed on it. I do the mechanical cleaning up of the leaves. So I actually remove the insect or remove the leaf with the insect a lot. Like I did that last year with mine. I have this
Mhm.
little worm eating my citrus, and it worked. I did it throughout 3 months, and I cut the cycle. And I was like,
That's
oh,
awesome.
it works. I don't like to put anything on it. So I was really emphatic on that. I also like with the white hat white flights because again, my orange is a espaliate, so it doesn't breed much. So I have to keep up with looking at it and doing mechanical cleaning. So I actually went with water and spray with water, pretty good.
Mhm.
Um, and if you have to use any, like let's say that you use neem oil for insects, stuff like that, you just make sure that you are not putting the neem oil when the flowers are there, which is kind of like difficult for the group B because
Mhm.
the group B has lots of flowers throughout the year. So just be aware that right now there is not much of a product that is actually safe for the bees, even though it does says that it's safe for the bees. There is not a really good indication of that. But
Mhm.
yes, I do put neem oil. Sometimes I put vinegar in the pests. So one of the things that I was doing is see if the vinegar will do something for the white flies or um, certain insects. So I had tried with the vinegar and water. I dilute really well and put the vinegar. For trips it worked, but I have to like keep going and keep going, putting a lot of it. So it's a little bit more work, but when I have the fruit there, I don't like to spray with anything.